Hi everyone. So this is my last video to you, but that does not mean that the semester is over. Please uh, contact me if you have any questions or you need any assistance. I will be in contact with you as well. But I wanted to give you some key takeaways from this semester and give you an opportunity to get extra credit for just listening to me ramble. So if you've learned these 5 things or seen these 5 things basically in action during this course, I feel like it's been a success, okay? The first 3 relate to law in general, and the last 2 are specific to business law. So you will have 2 points for each of the ones that you write down. The first thing and the most important thing is what? The law of the land. It's the Constitution, right? Everything that we do in law goes back to the Constitution in some way. It gives the federal government their powers, and it also restricts them on what they do, okay? So, how do we know what the Constitution means? The courts tell us, right? It's called judicial review. Marbury versus Madison is the landmark case that we still go back to today that says it's the judicial's duty to interpret the law. And so even though the U.S. Supreme Court is the law of the land, very few courts hit that court. So the law is going to depend on interpretation of the law is going to depend on the highest level of the court of a jurisdiction, how they interpreted it. So as you can see, law is going to be different from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, and that's why it's always important to do your research, and it changes all the time. Because we also know it depends on who's on our courts, right? The most famous one was the most famous example is Roe v. Wade after 50 years has been overturned. And even after they had attempted it before and the court said no, it was decided correctly, the Supreme Court of the United States, the new Supreme Court said it was decided incorrectly. So that's what we have. But when they make a decision, technically, we are supposed to continue to follow that decision because that's called what? Precedent. And what is precedent? It is all the decisions before us. And why do we have it? Because of stare decisis. Let the decision stand. We want consistency. So point number 2 here is that the courts interpret what the Constitution is. Remember, number 1 is Constitution is the supreme law of the land. So what do we have for number 3? Number 3 is the courts are always balancing interests, the rights of the individual versus the public good. And so you're going to see tons of balancing tests, tons of analysis based on what are the rights of the individual versus what is the good of the public. And we're going to try to balance those. So, third point, courts are always balancing rights of the individual with the public good. Okay, and now for a public service announcement. Unlike a lot of YouTube videos, you're not going to have something that you can just skip ad for this public service announcement. But I will give you even 2 more extra credit points for this next slide. There is no normal. I want to give you a little story I give all my students at the end of the semester. I grew up without much money at all. My mom was a factory worker her whole life, single mom. And I was a first generation college student. My mom had 8 brothers and sisters. I have probably 40 plus cousins and all the other relatives out there besides that. And no one had been to college. So I was already starting with a uphill battle. And I felt like, you know what? I don't feel normal. I don't know how to go about. Keep in mind, this is pre-internet. Yes, I just said that. I aged myself. Pre-internet. So you're trying to figure out how to even do something without being able to go to an internet. And I had no money. So I went to the community college in near my hometown, and it was the best thing I could have ever done. It grounded me. It gave me some of the basic skills I did not have. It still was not adequate to prepare me for how big UW-Madison was when I went there, but at least my grade point was so solid that when I went and tanked at the UW for a couple years, I was still able to graduate with less than a 3 though. Okay, so again, here I am not feeling normal because, oh yeah, I graduated, but not a great grade. So I decided to pay off my student loans. And because I was a communications major with a low grade point average, I didn't want to get into more student loans. There was nothing really I was going to do. I joined the Army. And when I joined the Army, because I had never went to officer training, I went in as an enlisted. So I'm a college graduate. So I'm a little bit older than most of the enlisted. And I looked around and I felt, I just don't feel normal. But again, one of the best things I did, I studied Arabic at the Monterey Institute Language, Defense Language Institute in Monterey. And I got out and I started looking for jobs. So I find this job for a manager training of a financial branch. And I thought to myself, okay, this is the last job I should be applying for. Why am I saying that? Because I've never took a business course in my life, and that was the one type of course I stayed away from. I did not want to do business. Just didn't want to. Again, we didn't have the internet. Business was a lot just more boring, right? But this is a branch manager training, so I'm like, it's management, I'm going to apply. And so I do this interview, and I will never forget the question that got me the job. I was interviewing, and they said, we see that you don't have any financial background at all. And in fact, you don't have any business law courses on your transcript. What makes you qualified for this position? Here again, I'm not normal in my mind. I'm not normal. But I looked at them and I said, if they taught me Arabic in 54 weeks, your management training program is 60. I'm pretty sure you can teach me that. And I was hired. And after 4 years of working in the management sector operations, I became a company auditor. So I was on a staff of company auditors who traveled the company and audited finance branches. Remember, again, the girl who had no finance experience, and I had no business courses on my my transcript. How did I do that? I worked hard, right? So my husband decides after I'm pregnant with my second son, hey, I want to move to Kansas City. I was in Wisconsin. My area was Wisconsin. And I was pregnant with my son and my second son, and traveling was getting to be a lot. He said, you can do what you want to do. You can stay home. You can go back to school, whatever you want. I said, I've always wanted to go back to law school. So my son is 7 weeks old, and he's not sleeping through the night. And I'm thinking, oh my God, there's no way I am going to be able to do this. That angel, he started sleeping through the night, 8 weeks old. I got him in my car, drove an hour to Topeka to go to law school at Washburn, looked around, and there were a handful of students my age. I was in my 30s by then, but not a lot. And again, I felt, oh gosh, this doesn't feel normal. But I had an 8-week-old son, and I managed to be on Law Journal, an editor of Law Journal, and be the lead attorney on our trial advocacy team, which actually did very well in our competition. So I ended up interning for the Attorney General's office and then the District Attorney's office, and then they hired me. And I started working, and I looked around and I thought, wow, all these people that are my age that went to law school sooner have this student loan debt. And I didn't have any because I didn't take what I thought was the normal path. But now I realize the older you get, there is no normal. There is every single different path that we take is different from someone else's. So we all take different paths in this roadway we call life, right? And where that leads you is up to you. You get to decide. I've argued all the way up to the Kansas Supreme Court, where I've had a double murder conviction reversed. Today I'm doing the thing I always wanted to do besides go to law school was teach. That actually was what I wanted to do first when I was younger. And then I wanted to go to law school because I wanted to make money. And I realized it's not about making the money. You're going to make money. Trust me, if it's your passion. It was my passion. I decided to leave so I could teach, and I love it to this day. So I didn't take what I thought was the normal road. But if what I have is the price of not going a normal road, I'll take that road every day. So don't ever think that you're not normal or you're not taking the normal road. There is no normal road anymore, if there ever was. People are different. We're all different. And I challenge you to embrace your differences. So write down there is no normal. You'll get 2 extra credit points on top of the other ones. So what is our next key takeaway? Well, remember I told you that the Constitution, everything goes back there, and it gives the government its powers. But there's a lot of legislation that happens in business at the state level that the Constitution doesn't give specific powers because states are supposed to be able to run their states. But in business, you'll see there's a lot of legislation and a lot of federal agencies handle those legislations, and you'll learn about that if you take business law too. But how do they get there? This is the key takeaway, the Commerce Clause. Remember, the Constitution lets us regulate commerce within foreign nations and among several states and Indian tribes. So the next point is the Commerce Clause gives Congress broad leeway to regulate business, right? Even in the states. So even intrastate commerce, so long as it impacts interstate. You don't have to put that last part. Just put the Commerce Clause gives Congress broad leeway to regulate commerce. Finally, business law is reactive. Why? Because we don't want to stifle the free flow of business. We want to be able to promote business in the free world. So what happens generally is bad will happen, more than not, and we will enact legislation. And this is usually done through our agencies as well or through an act. So a statute. So for example, Enron. Enron had the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. And the Sarbanes-Oxley Act really made corporations more accountable and made accounting practices for big corporations have less conflict of interest because of WorldCom and Enron corporations that were doing things in their accounting practices that weren't so kosher and ended up basically bankrupting so many million Americans. Then we had the 2008 housing crash, and we had the Dodd-Frank Act. And basically that gave the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, which is our CFTC, the ability to regulate more closely different markets, particularly when it comes to the swap market industry, because a lot of that was the swap markets that were causing the problem for the 2008 crash. So now the question is, with FTX, what is our next regulation going to be? I imagine we're going to see some crypto regulation coming because of the downfall of FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried. One point I'd like to make about Dodd-Frank is they actually loosened it up, took away a little of the regulations in 2018. So once they realized they've got regulations in place, we had to tighten this because lots of bad things happen. Now we're realizing it has a stifling effect on the economy. We're going to lax those up, and they did that in 2018. But the thing to remember is that business law is reactive. Generally, law is going to be in a reaction to something that occurred. So those are the points. You can get 12 points extra credit for just writing those things down. But the last thing I'd like to do is say thank you. Thank you so much for taking this class. I know that it has not been easy. I'm going to tell you that if you made it through this course, you probably can make it through almost any course. I hope, though, we've done it in a way that, or I've done it in a way that can break it down a little bit for you or get you to think. I know you hate the Schlimmer quizzes, but they really were quizzes to make you think, how are we going to apply facts to situation? Because you can't just memorize law. That's just not how it's handled. Good luck in all of your endeavors. And please, 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 if you have any questions, any concerns, reach out to me. Thank you.